everybody, I'm here with Matthew Gaughan of Blackpoolmatt's Wine Club. We did a video last month, but there was a unfortunate lawn mowing happening at the same time, so sorry we missed you last month, but here we are with the May edition, and the theme is summer wines, but...
Yeah. Well, last month was very unfortunate because we were in the Presidio and it was a really beautiful day and everything was perfect, and then they decided to mow the lawns for about 2 hours, and that really interfered with our sound quality. Hopefully today's a little bit better, and it is a beautiful day here in Sonoma. You can see the sunshine, it's warm, and definitely the theme of summer really sprung to mind in choosing these wines. We've got a sparkling wine from Australia, which is quite exciting, and then a kind of a rosé, but not a rosé, from Spain, and then a light-bodied red wine from Chile. So 3 really fun offbeat wines, and that's something I really want to emphasize in Blackpoolmatt's Wine Club, that these are wines that you don't find all the time and that may really perk your interest and make you think a little bit differently about wines and the regions that they come from.
And before we start in on the wines, I am really excited about Matthew's feature in New York Times for wine clubs that are a little bit off the beaten path. So just a shout out, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, if you haven't read the article, do so. It's written by Eric Asimov, and it's a really fun, interesting exploration of wine clubs across the USA, in contrast to those really big algorithm-based wine clubs which you find being advertised on Facebook and Instagram, which claim that they know your tastes, but very, very rarely do. Whereas mine is much more personalised. I want to know what you want to drink, and I have the wines that I think you will want to drink.
All right. So we'll start with the sparkling wine from Australia, which is kind of unique right off the bat. It's from Deviation Road, which is in Adelaide Hills.
Yes, obviously in my wine club I want to showcase great champagne, but I also want to share really good sparkling wine from around the world. I have English wine, Spanish wine, Italian sparkling wine, and here we are with Australians, showing that it doesn't have to be just champagne. And this is a really cool producer. They really focus on sparkling wine, called Deviation Road, from Adelaide Hills. And Adelaide Hills is a pretty exciting region in Australia because it's a little bit cooler. There's elevation, as the name suggests. There's also coastal influence. So Pinot Noir and especially Chardonnay work really well here. And Ellie, you worked in McLaren Vale, which is a little bit warmer than Adelaide Hills,
It is a little warmer,
but is nearby.
Yes.
What were your impressions of Australia and kind of the attitude to making wine in Australia?
The attitude was very laid back, and it was much appreciated. I had come from Napa Valley, working at wineries in Napa Valley, and so it was all of a sudden this wine was incorporated into their lunchtime meals. Everyone was tasting it and tasting the fermentations, and for me it was a much needed break in my California winemaking experience because it's just so lighthearted, and I mean at the end of the day it's fermented grapes, and so it was kind of fun to see. At least personally, that's what I took from it. It was it's a much more laid back relationship to wine.
And I love the name Deviation Road as well. That kind of sums up that, I think.
Yeah.
And this is made by Kate Laurie, who is from Australia, from a winemaking family. But she moved to Champagne to study wine because she loved France and thought, why not study wine in Champagne? And I disagree with that sentiment. And then came back and worked for a family winery for a while before setting up her own project in Adelaide Hills with her husband, Hamish. And so mainly focused on sparkling wine, which I think is a lot of fun. And this is 60% Pinot Noir and 40% Chardonnay. And I think it's a great example of how Australia isn't just big, bold, high alcohol wines. There's way more going on in Australia, which is a lot more fun, lighter bodied, or in this case, with nice acidity that you want in sparkling wine. So this is your first time trying the wine, Ella.
That's great.
Yeah, it's aged for 15 months, so kind of standard for what champagne producers would do. So it has a nice leasiness, nice spicy toastiness to it, but it's very light at the same time.
Got a really clean finish.
Very clean, yes, it does taste Australian in that sense.
Yeah.
They don't like their dirty wines. And so it's very fresh, I think, and perfect for a summer's day, and a really nice alternative to champagne, just to kind of explore the different styles and different regions that are out there.
Yeah. All right, should we move to... Well, actually, anything else you'd like to talk about this? This is his tech sheet that he always provides. Any fun food pairing or music that strikes your fancy?
Well, I went for pistachio crushed scallops.
Wow.
Very specific
Sign
food
me up.
pairing. But that kind of nuttiness and then the acidity of the wine to cut through the scallops and just really pair very well with them, I think would be a good pairing. And then the music I paired with Takei Mediza. And the music I paired with Takei Mediza, who is an Australian hip-hop artist. So keeping with Australia and making it contemporary as well. All the new things that are happening in Australia, not just in wine, but in music as well.
Yeah. Have you tasted any other things from
I have not
Ribera?
tasted any of them.
I'm curious what they have that's not sparkling, but I know they make mostly sparkling, but I'm curious what they dive into.
I think in California or in the States in general, only the sparkling wine is available
Okay.
because that's what they really specialise in. But I think they also make Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, so those are grapes that they're working with. But their sparkling wine is what they're really known for.
Well, our second wine, we are moving into Spain. And as you can see, we're going to post his, Matthew just wrote a rosé blog, which will be linked in the bio. But the colors on these wines, kind of the last two, are lighter than a red, but darker than a rosé. So they kind of toe that line. You can read more about it in the blog, but I'm sure Matthew will dive into it right now too.
Yeah, on the back it does say rosé wine, but you can see from the colour it's not really what you would expect from a rosé, which is usually really pale, pink, almost see-through. Whereas this one is like a very light coloured red wine. And this is made in a very traditional fashion. This is a biodynamic producer from Ribera del Duero. They were actually the first biodynamic producer in that region, which is central Spain and very hot but high altitude plantings. And it's called Ojo Gallo, which means rooster eye, and that's referring to the colour of the wine. As you can see, this really looks like the eye of a rooster.
Is that really what you'd say?
Well, in France they have a term "œil de perdrix," which means eye of the partridge, because the colour of the wine would look like a partridge's eye. Again, that's the first thing that I think of when looking at a wine. And so that's a play on this. It's a rooster eye. And it's actually kind of a claret style. So claret nowadays refers to Bordeaux. It's a British term for Bordeaux. But the style is actually claret, which is a pale coloured red wine that Bordeaux was known for back in the 1400s. And so that's why the British called Bordeaux claret, because it's associated with that style back in the day. Although now it's a lot darker coloured. And so this is like that claret style, really pale coloured red wine, which drinks like a rosé, a bit fruitier, a bit fuller, but still drink chilled and drink during the summer.
Yeah. I think you had mentioned it in your blog too, but the term claret, the British, to encompass all of Bordeaux wines? Really? Not necessarily lighter ones.
So it comes from that French term, which is still made in Bordeaux, claret. And so if you go to Bordeaux, you actually get to taste a similar coloured wine, similar styled wine, made very small production. But 600 years ago, all Bordeaux would look like that. And so that just became the generic English term for Bordeaux.
Yeah.
And so it's still used claret, but it's kind of old-fashioned now because the Bordeaux wines don't really look like that. And so you'd actually refer to the individual appellations, because Bordeaux is, of course, so prestigious. But here we're in Spain. But kind of influenced by that historic style. And biodynamic, as I mentioned, all pretty natural, pretty funky.
A lot of different wines go into this too. There's 7 different varieties.
Yeah, so it's mainly
fermented.
Tempranillo, which is the big grape of Ribera del Duero, but there's also Garnacha. There's Bobal, which is a black grape planted in Spain, quite widely planted, which usually produces pretty simple but light-bodied red wines. And then there's Monastral, which is Mourvedre. There's Villora, which is white grape of Rioja, which is actually Macabeo. And then there's Albio, which is the local white grape in Ribera del Duero. And now you can actually make white wine in Ribera del Duero. You didn't used to be able to, and Albio is the main grape there. And then, deep breath, there's Malvasia as well. So lots of different grape varieties. And those different grape varieties kind of soften Tempranillo. You've got those white grape varieties and the soft tannins of Garnacha as well. And Bobal.
Yeah. I have to say I never had wine that was co-fermented white and red before being a part of your wine club. Matthew has a couple different, like co-fermented white, red, grape wines, and they're all really fun and funky.
Yeah, and I think part of it is field blend and just working with what you've got. Another part of it is just softening the tannins, also lightening the colour, as in this instance, and also just adding aromatics. And why not? why shouldn't there be white grapes in a red wine? Obviously, if you want to make a red wine, you have to have black grapes to get the colour. But why not just throw those white grapes in and just work with them and see what they do?
Yeah.
Experiment. And what do you think of this wine, Ellen?
I think it's fantastic. I would love to drink this in the summer.
Mm-hmm. And I would serve it slightly chilled, maybe not fridge temperature, but just slightly warmer than refrigerator temperature. So put it in the fridge for like 20 minutes and then serve it. Very, very refreshing. But it isn't a rosé, even though they say rosé wine. There's definitely tannins there. There's a grip to it. So think of it more like Beaujolais, that kind of style.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the label? One of those that's so bad it's actually quite good.
I know. It's like, I believe that this was made 200 years ago, but if it was made 10 years ago, I wouldn't like it as much.
Yeah. But it certainly catches the eye and makes you question what it is, and unusual colour as well. There's a definite story behind it.
Yes. Do you want to talk about what you would pair with it?
Oh yeah, with tortilla, but Spanish tortilla.
Yeah.
Of course. I think that would be a perfect pairing. Tortilla has that kind of richness to it, and this would have the acidity to really pair with that tortilla. A well-made one, of course. And then for the music, I went with Teenage Fan Club to have a new album out. So they're a Scottish band who've been going for like 30 years now, and the new album is really, really good. And it's kind of light and easy to listen to, but the lyrics are a bit darker because they're getting old and they're questioning their existence.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that's kind of a fun pairing with this wine. So it's kind of light but substantial at the same time.
Matthew would also like to let everybody know that if you are going to make wine, please do not cap it with wax. It's too difficult to take off.
Yeah, and I don't see the purpose, but it's a traditional wine, so they're using wax, which is a traditional way of bottling the wine. But no, I'm not a huge fan.
All right, so the third one, we're moving on to Chile. I'll let you pronounce it because you are much better at that.
Am I? The grape here is Cinsault, and I've been having some interesting examples of Cinsault recently from South Africa especially, but we're here in Chile, and we're in Itata, which is southern Chile. And so historically the plantings of grape varieties in Chile were really focused on the Central Valley around the capital city of Santiago de Chile. And those produce pretty bulky, full-bodied, high-alcohol wines. If you go further south to Itata and Bio, it's cooler, and therefore the wines are going to be lighter bodied. And so these are regions which were historically not really taken very seriously because of that. But then there are producers like this one, and this is Pedro Parra, who was born in Concepcion, which lies directly between Itata and Bio, and he travelled around the world, did a PhD in terroir, which I didn't know you could do.
that existed.
He did that in Paris, and decided to return home and really explore the terroir of Bio and Itata, and make wines which really expressed that region. And he's been extremely influential, helping people around the world understand terroir and how you work with the land, preserve the land, and really express the land in the wines. And so he's working with older vines. These are 45 to 70 years old, and so this is where Cinsault really comes into its own, because when it's young vine it's high yields, and that's why it's planted very widely in South Africa, because it's very productive. But when it gets to old vines, then those yields lessen, and so there's more concentration to the wine, less fruit, and just more complex and a bit more structured. And so tasting old vine Cinsault is really fun and interesting. And I think it fits into a lot of current trends because it's lighter bodied. So you can see from the colour, it's a pretty pale ruby. I mean, it's not that much darker than the supposed rosé. And so that's matched in the style of the wine with the red fruits, and it's floral and pretty. Not as similar to Grenache, but not as high in alcohol as Grenache is.
And this one also is a field blend, so it includes some white as well as red grapes, Cinsault, Muscat, Semillon, Carignan, and Pais.
Yes, so it's labelled 100% Cinsault, but he's just picking whatever's in the vineyard. So that's his approach to terroir. It's like those vines are in the vineyard, that's what I'm going to work with. And so particularly the Semillon and the Muscat make the wines a little bit lighter, but Carignan bringing some black fruits. But he doesn't actually state what that blend is, so it's mainly Cinsault, with just random grapes being thrown in there as well.
And no barrels, just stainless steel and concrete for being in bottle.
Yeah, so that just adds to the lightness, so it doesn't add any heavy oak aromas, which is absolutely fantastic. There's a really nice tannic structure to this wine as well. Compared it to Grenache, but the acidity is a lot higher, as well as the alcohol being lower.
I love the name Bio Bio. That was kind of my takeaway from this.
Yeah.
From this tech sheet was like, what an amazing region.
Yeah, very easy to remember. This wine actually comes from Itata, but he does source grapes from Bio Bio as well, so just depending on the vineyard location.
And how long has he been making his own wine in Chile? Do you know that? Would you guess like 1 year or more than 1 year?
Oh no, it's been 10 years or more,
Oh,
maybe,
okay.
maybe 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But he is a very fashionable producer among people in the wine industry because of his work with the vineyard and the fact that he's so open and helpful to other winemakers and grape growers in the region as well as around the world, and the fact that he's working with a region that is lesser known but does actually have a lot of history.
And so you paired this one with a beef, which kind of, or wine braised beef with mushrooms, which kind of trends a little bit more to a red wine.
Yes, and so I thought that the mushrooms was the first thing that actually came to my mind with this wine because it's quite earthy.
Yeah, it is.
So I was looking up recipes and wine braised beef came up as well, and I thought that actually, because it does have the tannic structure to go with beef, there's something that's been braised, so it's a bit of a softer style of beef, a bit kind of flakier as it were, which goes with this lighter bodied style of red wine. And of course we're in Chile, where they will quite happily eat beef. Though not as much as Argentina, of course.
Of course. And you paired it with the Harlem Gospel Travelers.
This is a recent discovery. They're a group of guys in New York. They're not from New York, but they moved to New York separately and learned gospel music at a church. And they were really young, like in their teens. And so it's a religious project, but one to really help young people, settle in New York, get a job, learn a trade. And in this instance, it was learning music. And they were already very naturally talented. They had the voices, but then they were trained to learn gospel music. And they've come out with a couple of albums, and they're absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Really, really beautiful. I actually sent a link to my mum, and she said it made her want to go back to church again. That's the first time in a long time she said that.
Maybe I won't listen to it then.
But it's nice to have that soulful music that is religious, but at the same time it's more spiritual than religious.
Yeah.
And just these guys helping each other and just producing beautiful music, which is traditional, but they do write the songs, so they're coming up with something new as well. And so I thought that fit with this wine, that sense of him going back to where he was born and having learned about wine, having learned about terroir around the world, and then going back and really helping his region and the growers there and the winemakers there to really express that sense of place, and that's what the musicians did as well.
So for anyone who's new to this club, these are very thought out suggestions for you, which I think the more I work with you, the more I see that these are all very well, you spend time on it. So
yeah, it also enables me to keep up with latest music trends, which is really good because you do get stuck in a rut,
yeah.
and then you discover all this new music that's out there. So that's what wine does. It takes you to different places and makes you learn about different things, and that's the whole essence of this club, to take you all around the world and discover things that you didn't already know.
And for me, if I were to go to a party this summer, these would be like the 3 wines to take with me. I feel like it would be a party stopper.
Absolutely. If you've got an outdoor barbecue, bring these wines along. Everyone's going to be drinking them, talking about them, asking about them, and learning about all sorts of different things that they didn't know.
Well, thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, cheers.